Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Today, Africa commemorates 63 years since the founding of the Organization of African Unity, a historic milestone that continues to inspire our collective pursuit of unity, liberation, dignity, and development. As we mark this year's Africa Day under the theme, 63 Years of Unity, Integration, and Development, let's celebrate together. We reaffirm our unwavering commitment to the aspirations of Agenda 2063 and to building the Africa we want.
If you have ever asked why the African Union has not stopped the war in Sudan, why xenophobic attacks continue in South Africa, why the Democratic Republic of Congo remains trapped in conflict, why terrorism and banditry have spread across Nigeria and the Sahel, or why foreign powers continue to treat Africa as a geopolitical chessboard, then this episode is for you. The African Union was created to promote unity, peace, security, development, and collective action across Africa. Yet, many Africans today are asking a painful question. Where is the African Union when Africa is bleeding? From Khartoum to Goma, from Johannesburg to Mali, from the forest of Nigeria to the mineral-rich regions of Central Africa. Millions of Africans are facing war, displacement, poverty, terrorism, and instability, while summits are held, communiques are issued, and resolutions are passed. Many citizens feel the organization has fallen short of the Pan-African dream envisioned by its founding fathers. Today, we examine the promise of the African Union, the realities of its performance, the crisis shaking our continent, and whether the organization can still become the powerful voice of Africa that its founders imagined. This is not an attack on the African Union. It is a call for reflection. It is a call for accountability. It is a call for action. And most importantly, it is a call for African Renaissance. Welcome to Strength of Africa TV.
Strength of Africa TV presents Africa Under Siege. Has the AU failed Africa?
From Khartoum's burning skyline to the valleys of the Congo, the cries of wounded children ride the restless winds that blow. The wealth beneath our soil shines, yet sorrow fills our hands. While brothers fall in silence across our motherland. The torch of Nkrumah flickers through the storms of fear and pain. Calling scattered sons and daughters to rise and build again. Though borders divide our people and old wounds remain, Africa's heart keeps beating through the thunder and the rain. Oh, Africa, arise and heal. Let unity become our shield. No more a chessboard for the power. No more divided together stronger than we've ever been.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are at this moment. I'm your host, Adebayo Oladokun, and this is Strength of Africa TV, where truth meets courage, where the past is reawakened and the future of the motherland is reclaimed. Today's episode is titled Africa Under Siege. As the African Union failed Africa? Let's begin with the dream of African unity, from OAU to African Union. To understand the present, we must first understand the past. Long before the African Union was born, Africa's greatest sons and daughters were already dreaming of a united continent. They dreamed of an Africa that would never again be divided, exploited, or dominated. They dreamed of an Africa speaking with one voice. They dreamed of an Africa controlling its destiny. These were the Pan-Africanists, men and women who believed that the freedom of one African nation was incomplete without the freedom of all African nations. At the forefront of this movement stood visionaries such as Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, Julius Nyerere of Tanzania, Ahmed Sekou Toure of Guinea, Patrice Lumumba of Congo, Jomo Kenyatta of Kenya, and many others who envisioned a united Africa capable of standing tall among the nations of the world. Their vision was not merely political, it was civilizational. They understood that Africa's artificial borders, created during colonialism, had divided peoples who shared languages, histories, cultures, and destinies. They knew that a fragmented Africa will always be vulnerable. A divided Africa will always be weak. A divided Africa will always be susceptible to external manipulation. In 1963, this dream took a major step forward with the creation of the Organization of African Unity. The OAU became a symbol of African solidarity. It played a significant role in supporting liberation movements across the continent. It stood against apartheid. It supported the struggle for independence in Southern Africa. It helped mobilize African support against colonial rule. However, the OAU had limitations. Its principle of non-interference often prevented it from acting decisively during internal crises. Many African leaders used sovereignty as a shield against accountability. As the 20th century drew to a close, Africa faced new challenges. Globalization was reshaping the world. Economic competition was intensifying. New security threats were emerging. The continent needed a stronger institution. Thus, in 2002, the African Union was born. Its mission was ambitious: to achieve greater unity, to promote peace and security, to advance economic development, to defend African interests, to build a prosperous and integrated continent. For many Africans, the birth of the African Union represented hope. Hope that the mistakes of the past will be corrected. Hope that Africa will speak with one voice. Hope that Africa will take its destiny into its own hands. More than 2 decades later, the question we must ask is simple. Has the African Union fulfilled this promise? Or has the dream of African unity become trapped in bureaucracy, political compromise, and inaction? That question takes us to the heart of this episode. Because across the continent today, the signs of crisis are everywhere. And many Africans are wondering whether their continental institution is truly rising to the occasion. Let's look at Africa's bleeding wounds: Sudan, the DRC, and the cost of inaction. As we speak today, millions of Africans are living through humanitarian tragedies that should trouble the conscience of every leader on the continent. These are not distant crises. They are African crises. They are our crises. And their consequences reach far beyond national borders. They threaten the stability of entire regions. They destroy economies. They generate mass displacement. They create conditions for extremism, criminality, and foreign interference. Perhaps no current conflict better illustrates this reality than the war in Sudan. Sudan, once seen as a nation with immense potential, Sudan has been devastated by a brutal power struggle that has plunged the country into chaos. Cities have been reduced to battlefields. Families have been torn apart. Millions have been displaced. Children have lost access to education. Hospitals have been destroyed. Entire communities have been left without basic services. For ordinary Sudanese citizens, the war is not about politics. It's about survival. It's about finding food. It's about finding safety. It's about living to see another day. Yet, many Africans look at this tragedy and ask a difficult question. Where is the African Union? Where is the urgency? Where is the decisive leadership? Where is the continental response, commensurate with the scale of the disaster? To be fair, the African Union has issued statements. It has held consultations. It has participated in diplomatic efforts. But for many observers, the impact of these efforts has been limited compared to the magnitude of the crisis. While Africans die, the world moves on, and the war continues. Then there's the Democratic Republic of Congo, a land blessed with extraordinary natural wealth, a land that should be one of the most prosperous countries in the world, a land rich in cobalt, copper, gold, coltan, diamonds, and countless of other strategic resources. Yet for decades, the Congo has been synonymous with conflict. Generation after generation has grown up in the shadow of instability. Armed groups continue to operate. Communities continue to suffer. Millions have been displaced. Countless lives have been lost. The tragedy of the Congo is not only a security failure, it is a moral failure. It is a political failure. It is a Pan-African failure. How can a continent possess such immense resources and yet allow one of its most resource-rich nations to remain trapped in cycles of violence? How can the promise of African unity coexist with such enduring suffering? These questions demand honest answers, because the longer these conflicts continue, the more they erode the confidence in continental institutions. The more they feed public frustration, the more they create the impression that African solutions to African problems remain an unfinished project. The founding fathers of Pan-Africanism did not envision an Africa where nations will watch each other burn. They envisioned an Africa that will act collectively, Africa that will protect its people, an Africa that will stand together in times of crisis. Until that vision becomes reality, the wounds of Sudan, Congo, and other conflict zones will remain open, and the continent will continue to pay a heavy price. Let's examine the rise of insecurity, terrorism, banditry, arms proliferation, and foreign manipulation. While some Africa's crises make international headlines, others spread quietly across vast territories, destabilizing communities and undermining national security. Across the Sahel, West Africa, Central Africa, and parts of East Africa, a new threat has emerged. A threat that respects no borders. A threat that feeds on weak governance, poverty, unemployment, and instability. That threat is the expansion of terrorism and armed criminality. From Mali to Burkina Faso, from Niger to Nigeria, from Chad to parts of Mozambique, Extremist groups have exploited local grievances and government weaknesses to establish footholds. The consequences have been devastating. Villages have been destroyed. Schools have been closed. Farmers have abandoned their fields. Businesses have collapsed. Thousands of lives have been lost. Millions have been displaced. In Nigeria, communities have faced the dual threat of terrorism and banditry. Whole regions have experienced kidnappings, attacks on villages, destruction of farmlands, and mass displacement of people. For many rural communities, security has become a daily concern. Parents worry about their children. Farmers worry about their harvest. Travelers worry about their journeys. Citizens wonder whether the state can adequately protect them. Yet, these security threats do not exist in isolation. They are fueled by another growing problem: arms proliferation. Weapons continue to flow across porous borders. Smuggling networks operate across regions. Conflicts in one country often spill into neighboring states. The result is a vicious cycle. More weapons create more instability. More instability creates more conflict. More conflict creates greater demand for weapons. And the cycle continues. This is precisely the type of challenge that requires a strong continental response. No single country can effectively address transnational security threats alone. Terrorist networks do not recognize borders. Arms traffickers do not respect sovereignty. Criminal organizations do not carry passports. They operate across regions. They adapt quickly. They exploit gaps in coordination. That is why many Africans expect the African Union to play a more robust role in coordinating intelligence sharing, border security cooperation, counter-terrorism strategies, and regional stabilization efforts. But there is another dimension to Africa's security challenge, one that is often overlooked: foreign interference. For centuries, Africa has attracted external interest due to its strategic location, natural resources, and growing population. Today, global powers continue to compete for influence across the continent. Some seek access to minerals. Some seek military advantages. Some seek economic opportunities. Some seek geopolitical leverage. There is nothing inherently wrong with international partnerships. Africa should engage the world. Africa should trade with the world. Africa should cooperate with the world. The problem arises when African interest becomes secondary to external interest. The problem arises when African states are drawn into geopolitical rivalries that do not serve their people. The problem arises when Africa becomes a chessboard rather than a player. For too long, Africa has been viewed as a prize to be competed for rather than a partner to be respected. For too long, African resources have enriched others while many Africans remain poor. For too long, external actors have exploited African divisions to advance their own objectives. This is precisely why the Pan-Africanists emphasized unity. They understood that a divided Africa will always be vulnerable. They understood that fragmentation invites manipulation.
Or perish.
They understood that true independence requires collective
Africa will
strength.
remain at the mercy of
Today,
imperialists.
their warning appears more relevant than ever. Because the security of one African nation is increasingly linked to the security of all African nations. And if Africa is to escape the cycle of conflict, terrorism, instability, and external dependence, it must rediscover the spirit of unity that inspired its founders. The question is whether the African Union is prepared to lead that transformation. Let's look at xenophobia, African fragmentation, and the crisis of Pan-African consciousness. If there is one development that strikes at the very heart of the Pan-African project, it is xenophobia. Not because it involves foreigners, but because it involves Africans turning against fellow Africans. For decades, the ideal of Pan-Africanism has been built upon a simple but powerful principle: that Africa is one family, that our diversity is a strength, that the destiny of one African people is connected to the destiny of all African peoples. Yet, in recent years, Periodic xenophobic attacks in South Africa have shocked the continent. Images of African-owned businesses being looted, African migrants being harassed, communities living in fear, families losing their livelihoods. These images have left deep emotional scars across Africa. What makes this particularly painful is the history. During the apartheid years, many African nations stood firmly with South Africa. They provided diplomatic support. They provided financial assistance. They provided training grounds. They provided refuge for freedom fighters. They mobilized international pressure against apartheid. They sacrificed for the freedom of South Africa. African blood, African sweat, African resources, and African solidarity contributed to the liberation of South Africa. That is why many across the continent feel particularly hurt when they see fellow Africans targeted simply because of their nationality. The recent wave of xenophobic incidents also triggered a significant diplomatic response from Ghana. The government of Ghana formally petitioned the African Union to place the issue of xenophobic attacks against African nationals in South Africa on the agenda of the AU's mid-year coordination meeting. Ghana described the attacks as a matter of urgent continental interest, arguing that they threaten the very foundation of Africanism, regional integration, and African unity. The petition called for collective African action, including continental dialogue, fact-finding efforts, and practical measures to protect African migrants and investments across the continent. The response of the African Union has so far been primarily diplomatic rather than enforcement-oriented. African Union rights institutions linked to the AU system condemned the attacks and expressed grave concern over what they described as a recurring pattern of xenophobic violence targeting African migrants. The issue was elevated to the continental agenda, generating debate about the responsibility of member states to protect fellow Africans residing within their borders. However, critics argue that the AU's response has once again exposed its limitations. While statements of condemnation, diplomatic engagements, and calls for dialogue are important, many Africans are asking whether the Union possesses the political will and institutional tools to move beyond expressions of concern toward meaningful accountability and prevention. For them, the South African xenophobia question has become yet another test of whether the African Union can defend the ideas of Pan-African brotherhood when those ideas come under direct assault. But this issue goes beyond South Africa. Xenophobia is ultimately a symptom of a deeper problem, a crisis of Pan-African consciousness. It reflects the failure to see one another as partners in a shared destiny. It reflects the failure to recognize that Africa's challenges require Africa's collective efforts. It reflects the failure to appreciate that migration within Africa is often driven by economic necessity, conflict, education, and opportunity. When an African is attacked for being African, the entire continent is wounded. When an African is humiliated for being African, the Pan-African dream suffers a blow. When Africans begin to see each other as enemies rather than allies, we hand victory to the forces that have always benefited from African division. This is where the African Union should play a much more visible role, not only as a political body, but as a cultural and moral institution. The AU must help rebuild the spirit of African brotherhood. It must promote education about Pan-African history. It must encourage people-to-people integration. It must champion the idea that every African has a stake in the success of every other African. The African we seek to build cannot be held together by treaties alone. It must also be held together by shared values, shared memories, shared purposes, and shared destiny. Without that foundation, the dream of African unity will remain incomplete. Can the African Union be reformed? The road to Africa's renaissance. After examining the many challenges confronting our continent, we arrive at a critical question. Is the African Union failing? Or is it an institution that requires deep reform to fulfill its mission? The answer may lie somewhere in between. The African Union has achieved important successes. It has helped mediate political disputes. It has deployed peacekeeping missions. It has advanced economic integration initiatives. It has provided a platform for continental dialogue. It has helped keep the idea of African unity alive. These achievements should not be ignored. However, good intentions are not enough. Summits are not enough. Communiques are not enough. Africa needs results. The African Union must evolve from being primarily a deliberative body into a more effective instrument of action. First, the AU must strengthen its peace and security architecture. Early warning signs of conflict must be taken more seriously. Preventive diplomacy must be prioritized. Crises should be addressed before they explode into full-scale conflicts. Second, the AU must improve its ability to respond rapidly to emergencies. When civilians are threatened, the continent should not have to wait for outside actors to take the lead. Africa must develop the capacity to protect Africans. Third, member states must demonstrate greater political commitment. An African Union is only as strong as the nations that comprise it. If national interests always override continental interests, the Union will remain weak. Fourth, Africa must accelerate economic integration. A continent that trades together, invests together, and builds infrastructure together is more likely to stand together. Economic fragmentation breeds political fragmentation. Economic cooperation strengthens unity. Fifth, Africa must confront the security challenge with unprecedented seriousness. Regional intelligence sharing must be enhanced. Joint security operations must be improved. Border management must be strengthened. The flow of illegal arms must be curbed. Terrorists and criminal networks must be denied safe havens. 6. The issue of community security must be addressed. In countries such as Nigeria, there is a growing argument for responsible state policing and community policing structures that can complement national security efforts. Local communities often possess critical knowledge of their environments. When properly regulated, community-based security mechanisms can improve early warnings, intelligence gatherings, and rapid response to threats. Several federal systems around the world successfully utilize subnational law enforcement structures while maintaining national cohesion. African governments should study and adapt such models to their unique realities. 7th, government must address the challenge of undergoverned forest reserves and remote territories. In many parts of Africa, including Nigeria, vast forest reserves have become hideouts for bandits, terrorists, kidnappers, and other criminal elements. These expansive areas often provide cover for criminal activities and facilitate escape from security operations. Governments should either effectively police, monitor, and secure these reserves or empower host communities through responsible management arrangements that ensure the land serves productive economic and security purposes. No territory should exist beyond the reach of legitimate authority. No portion of Africa should become sanctuary for those who prey on innocent people. Finally, the AU must reconnect with the African people. Too many ordinary Africans see the institutions as distant. Too many do not feel represented. Too many do not see its impact in their daily lives. The African Union must become more accessible, more accountable, more responsive, more people-centered. Because the future of Africa will not be determined in the conference halls alone. It will be determined in farms, in factories, in schools, in communities, and in the hearts of Africans everywhere. My fellow Africans, the question we asked at the beginning of this episode was simple. Africa under siege, where is the African Union? After examining the evidence, the answer is both sobering and hopeful. The African Union exists. Its structures exist. Its ambitions exist. Its promises exist. But its effectiveness depends on the courage, vision, and commitment of Africa's leaders and its people. The real question may not be where the African Union is. The real question may be where Africa is going. Will we continue down the path of division? Will we continue to allow conflicts to fester? Will we continue to allow foreign interests to define our future? Will we continue to watch our brothers and sisters suffer while we look away? Or will we choose a different path, a path of unity, a path of accountability, a path of security, a path of development, a path of self-reliance, a path of Pan-African renaissance? The Founding Fathers did not give us a perfect continent. They gave us a mission. They handed us a torch. They entrusted us with a dream. It is now our responsibility to carry that dream forward. Africa's future will not be built by others. It will be built by Africans. It will not be saved by outsiders. It will be saved by Africans. And it will not rise through wishful thinking. It will rise through unity, sacrifice, leadership, and action. Let this episode be more than a discussion. Let it be a conversation. Let it be a movement. Let it be a wake-up call. Let it be a declaration that Africa's best days are not behind her. They are ahead of her. And a closing prayer. May God bless Africa. May God heal the wounds of Sudan. May God bring peace to the Congo. May God protect the people of Nigeria, the Sahel, and all conflict-affected regions. May God remove hatred, division, and xenophobia from our hearts. May God grant wisdom to our leaders. May God grant courage to our people. May God guide the African Union toward its highest purpose. And may the day come when Africa stands united, secure, prosperous, and respected among the nations of the world. Amen. If you believe in the African dream, please share this message. Subscribe to Strength of Africa TV. Join the conversation, and together, let's keep building the African our ancestors dreamed of and our children deserve. Until next time, stay informed, stay inspired, and keep the spirit of Africa alive. I'm your host, Adebayo Oladokun, and this is Strength of Africa TV. If you found value in this conversation, subscribe to our YouTube channel, endeavor to join our membership, and give super thanks. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Rumble. For advert placement, visit us online at Strength of Africa TV. Watch out for the next episode. You don't want to miss it. Until then, tell your own story. Because Africa's future is written in African ink. Stay rooted, stay bold, stay African. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next episode. Bye.
From Khartoum's burning skyline to the valleys of the Congo, the cries of wounded children ride the restless winds that blow. The wealth beneath our soil shines, yet sorrow fills our hands. While brothers fall in silence across our motherland. The torch of Nkrumah flickers through the storms of fear and pain. Calling scattered sons and daughters to rise and build again. Though borders divide our people and old wounds remain, Africa's heart keeps beating through the thunder and the rain. reality.